Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. Today we are helping you stream like a pro with the help of our host, Vizrt, and Chris Burgos joining us. Chris was like, I've been watching you guys' YouTube channel. I think you guys need a little bit of help. So let me come on and do this professional streaming workshop.
Thanks, Derek. No, I interact with you guys a lot, and a lot of times at events and things like that. And it's always good to be working with the guys who are working with the technology. You guys especially serve so many different kinds of partners and different organizations, and I think what we're going to talk about today is like how you kind of fit all those tools in and actually do some live streaming like the pros who get paid to do it do.
Definitely. Well, look, I got my notepad today. I get to take the host goggles off and be a viewer today. So, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll remind everybody out there in our audience that we will take any of your questions. So feel free to get those in. And Chris, I'll see you in a bit for some Q&A.
Thanks, Derek. We're going to talk about some really cool things today, and I really took my time thinking about what does it mean to stream like a pro today, and what does that mean as you look at all the different facets. And I wanted to sort of start with a little bit of what we got into before, which is like our testing and our gear setup. We did a little preamble before we got on the stream here, and we had to do some connectivity flow, some routing and things like that. And when I think about my gear, I have sort of graduated over the years in different live streams. I started out doing a very basic home stream from my computer, simple gaming stuff. And then as I sort of grew through the ranks, I was doing more live streams with small audiences and single cameras. And so you can get away with that with lots of pieces of software today. But as we grow through the ranks and our streams sort of gain more complexity, I think one of the tools that we sometimes don't think about, we're thinking about the software or the production switcher, and I'll be showcasing one of those today. We think about our tools that are interconnecting, our audio interfaces, microphones, cameras, and all that. But I think something that often gets left behind is control. And I actually am going to showcase one of the cool pieces of control that I like to utilize, which is the Flex Dual. So before I show it, and I actually have it in studio, and if you're unfamiliar with me, I like to do it live. I like to show the technology in action. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of live demonstration in the video box here, and we're going to do some cool MEs because I am sort of practicing what I preach. We're using all of these live stream tools as part of this stream itself. The Flex Dual, and we're going to showcase it in a few seconds here. I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to shrink down really small, and now we sort of see that control surface in the background. The Flex Dual is an all-encompassing powerhouse when I think about live streaming. It gives me the functionality to tackle all different levels of complexity of streams because it allows to work with both your traditional program preview workflows, but also, and I'll punch some buttons in a few seconds here, allows me to work in different stripes and different compositions, kind of like what I just did here, driving the composition window. I never get into a position where I'm unable to do the stream, whether that's the complexity of adding new sources, whether that's controlling audio, and there's sort of audio knobs in the top left of the screen there, and you can actually see the little LEDs are moving as I'm talking because the control surface is giving you live feedback as you're getting that audio. It is really the top of the line when it comes to control. I have full macro capabilities. My traditional T-bar is also on there, but you see I have two stripes. I also have control if I'm working with the PTZ cam, and it's actually why I'm on a webcam for our show. I have my PTZ camera showcasing my Flex Dual. So I'm actually going to sort of leave the frame here for a moment, and I did not set a box for this, so I'm just going to try and push myself out. There we go. And as part of my live setup here, I'm actually going to walk over to the Flex. You still have me on audio, and I'm over here, and I'm going to be switching and controlling what's going on my TriCaster. So I'm going to do a little box setup, but I just wanted to show, hey, this is the live control surface. And it's got a lot of cool things that are happening. It's a little hard to see on the camera, but my LED readouts are actually showcasing all of the elements that are happening in my production. I've named some of my sources like my PTZ camera, the fact that the control surface is coming in. I've got a web GUI set up. I have all of this at my fingertips, as well as having the ability to control media work with things like TalkBack if I was working with a Zoom call or a Teams call, do things like record, stream. The Flex Dual is sort of the high watermark, I think, in terms of control. And why I wanted to start here is because in the pandemic, we know a lot of organizations switched to streaming models. And as those productions grew and changed, they got more complex. And eventually, we sort of had this issue where lots of people were using Stream Decks. And your Stream Deck has only so many buttons. Well, our Flex tool is giving you all of the levels of control and more to sort of accomplish your tasks. So I'm going to push back over to the computer for a second and get on my comp. And then we're going to showcase how the Flex Dual controls your show. So we'll sort of see a picture-in-picture here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sort of grow my UI here a little bit, just so we can see it a little better. Move it over. I'm just going to grow this really quickly. Okay, so now we have this is my switcher, or my live production switchers in my top left corner, and my Flex Dual, where you can see my sort of hands in the bottom right corner. I now have the ability to control what's happening in my boxes, and we have my webcam over here. You can see I'm sort of off screen. We have the UI itself. I have the PTZ. This is all happening because of our IP infrastructure. And I'll get into that in a few seconds, but basically, I have full control over my TriCaster, including later when I'm going to queue up a little video, because we are going to showcase a video clip at the end of our session here. I have something really cool for my high-level live streamers, a new piece of equipment that I think you're all going to be really excited about. But my ability to go in and go through my different compositions, and I have sort of different comps set up in here, preview different video clips. It's that full level of control that I had at the touch of my fingers, including the ability to cue those clips, play those clips, move around, the ability to roll my T-bar to sort of go through and do your sort of fades, wipes, etc. The ability to control banks because I have a lot of sources as I've gone to IP. And all of these levels of control sort of add to what is your live streaming. So when we're thinking about our tool set, I really like the Flex Dual. Again, 2 stripes, so I can do something like control an onset monitor. I can control my main program that's going out to my stream. I can enable my recording. I can enable my stream. If I'm working with audio, and I'm going to actually throw the UI again here so we can see the CS in full. Towards the top over here, I even have some simplified audio controls. I have my output control, which I can push to mute. I have 2 different output levels. So if I wanted to say be outputting to recording while I'm also outputting to a stream, I could have those mapped here. I have a talkback control. So if I had a microphone going into my production and I wanted to talk back to my Zoom call as sort of a voice of God, or my Teams call, separate from what the host is doing, I can control that. And then for my real production guys, I even have a headphone out. So I can hook a headphone into the back of this control surface. And now I can put my CS far away from my live production system and still be able to listen to whatever I selected. The power of the Flex Dual really comes into different levels and tiers. And I think the last piece I'll highlight, and you'll sort of see I'm pointing out this row over here. I have one of these buttons like, this is my new utility role. And it allows me to do some really powerful things, such as bind macros and automation directly to the board. We all have done tons of live streaming shows, and there are levels into what we want to accomplish. I can direct bind buttons to maybe add lower third graphics. I can bind buttons that can control my composition window. All of that can be at the fingertips right here. I can still use it like a traditional switcher like we're using it today, where I'm able to go through and punch and go program preview and do my takes, wipes, transitions. I can position my camera. But this direct bind macro row that I'm sort of highlighting here on the screen, right above my program preview row, is so much power at my fingertips. If you're not familiar with macros and automation, the ability to do some nice sequencing, if I wanted to have a start a show that automatically runs, like we had at the beginning of this very stream where we sort of had our graphic, then we went to our presenters, I could have that all bound and automated to be controlling levels of my production. Because the Flex Dual is dual stripe, you get that perfect mirror of what's happening on the bottom can happen on the top. I could have different levels of control. On my bottom, I could be controlling my live stream. And on my top, if I was doing an in-person event, I could be controlling my in-person monitors and never have to worry. I have two distinct zones of control. Last beautiful part of what the Flex tool is doing, and then we'll sort of move on to some of the other tools because we have a lot to talk about. These stripes are going to be color-coded based upon what they're controlling. That means that if I wanted to, right now they're just sort of controlling program preview, but if I dedicate this setup to a different control, like let's say an ME, I could go through and change the button colors so I know, hey, my top stripe is controlling my ME, my bottom stripe, my red-green, is doing my traditional program preview workflow. So that really allows us to cool things. I'm going to actually bounce over. So now I have changed this stripe. I have a stripe button on each row here, and I've actually changed it to be controlling what is the two box that we're in. Or excuse me, it's got a couple boxes, but right now it's just going to be showcasing my UI of my, it's just showcasing my control surface. This level of stripe control is now bounced over to a given mix effect that I've set in my TriCaster. A little bit of high-level workflow, but this is a really cool idea to say, hey, zone 2, this is controlling a monitor. If I'm in a sports production, this could be controlling the screen in the facility. If I'm doing a church production, this could be controlling the boards, or it could be controlling a downstage monitor. If I'm doing my sort of corporate workflows, and I wanted to have two separate outputs being controlled. Maybe I had one presentation behind the speaker and one presentation off under the monitor, I can have the stripe work through and balance between different control setups. It's really slick, the fact that it's color-coded. It gives you these two distinct zones. And I think all in all, with the Flex tool, you get a really solid, expansive set of tools at your fingertips. I like the color coding. I like the fact that my LEDs change as I name them. For instance, on my LED right now, I have a web GUI set up, the control surface, one of the computers I'm using. I even have some remote storage. All of my buttons are labeled here, so as I'm switching, I'm actually going to specific sources. So that's the Flex tool in a nutshell. I'm actually going to shoot back over, but I really like to start here because this is one of the coolest tools, and I think there's nothing you can't do in live production with something like the Flex tool. So I'm going to come back over here on screen. You'll see me in a few seconds. Here we are. So that was the Flex tool and where I wanted to start with just for control. It's always important to have the best kinds of tools as you roll out your production. For instance, in this very call, I'm using NDI tools to sort of power my production. So part of what I'm doing in conjunction with the Flex tool, which is in my case controlling a TriCaster, is I'm also taking the output of my video production switcher and the audio, so video and audio, and actually pushing it into this call as a webcam. So that's a free tool called NDI Webcam. And what I've done over here is I've actually got the UI here. I'm going to pull up some of my NDI tools in 1 second. And we'll see that NDI is really, really powerful. It is a tool set that's enabling so many things. It is free for download. So you go to ndi.tv and you have access to these tools. In this very production, I'm using about 5 different tools for this. I'm actually screen capturing my laptop, which you see currently. I'm producing a virtualized webcam, which is taking the output of my production switcher and bringing it into this very production. I'm also using some behind the scenes tools that we're going to get into in sort of my next setup. But NDI Tools is an amazing little feature set that is entirely free. It's on Windows and it's on Mac. And I highly recommend that people who are in the streaming business incorporate it. Something as simple as someone wants to bring a laptop into the production, you can use NDI Tools to help assist that. If you wanted to create a virtual webcam for any of these conferencing apps, we're doing this with some of the newer stuff, but if you have an old school conferencing app, something legacy, you could still use our NDI tool webcam and actually inject your audio and video into that production. And it's how I'm doing this production. We have synced audio and video as well as some of the cool stuff I'm doing behind the scenes. Always a big shout out to NDI Tools because of what they're capable of. For a free download, you just get so much. And the last thing you get I think that's going to be important to our next conversation is NDI Bridge. NDI Bridge allows us to connect remote environments, and we're going to showcase Bridge actually live on our call here. So I'm going to bounce back over. When we think about the stages of our live production, I don't think people start here from an engineering mindset, but beyond having the right tools, you need backups. There is always going to be a scenario where things don't go the way you want them to. And the next piece of technology I want to showcase is something pretty new that we released. It is, as Viz, we brought to the stage TriCaster Now, which is a cloud-based TriCaster that we host and gives you the full production suite, but in a remote cloud workflow. So here's the scenario. You show up on site. It's a live streaming event for a corporate facility. You have some NDI-enabled devices. Maybe you have something capturing computer laptops. Maybe you have some NDI PTZ cameras like I've had in my production scenario. And for whatever reason during shipping, something's happening to your system. What are you going to do? Well, you've already done some of the heavy lifting by enabling an IP-based workflow. Why not bring and incorporate in a virtual production switcher? It's going to look very similar to what I just showcased because we use the technology, but this TriCaster that I'm showcasing now over on the screen is actually hosted in the cloud. Even though my TriCaster is hosted in the cloud, I still have the ability to pull in my local NDI feeds. In this case, what you're seeing on screen above me is the PTZ feed coming and showcasing the control surface that we were doing the demonstration before of. I'm going to pop myself on a screen here and just go over to prove that there is my NDI feed. So this NDI feed right now is going up from my location out of my studio I'm working out in New Jersey. It's going up to the cloud. So our cloud instance is located on the eastern seaboard. It's in the DMV area, so I believe in Virginia. And then it's coming back down for me to be able to utilize in our production workflow. And then finally it's going to the stream. And you can see I'm sort of moving myself, this is live video we have coming in front of us. I'm like waving my fingers and everything in front of this. The return time on this for me is amazing. If you're used to using cloud tools, the fact that you could spin up your own TriCaster and bring in control, get video sources from a site for disaster recovery for me is amazing. I'm going to come back over so you guys can see me again. So what do we have? We have an 8-channel NDI-based remote cloud production system that can stream. I have my full streaming suite. All the presets I want. I could set up a backup Facebook stream, a stream to Twitch. I can create my own custom presets if I'm working with a given provider that maybe doesn't have an API. I have all of that running in the background. It takes less than 15 minutes to spin my system up. And then once I have it, it's now a tool as part of my production. So I was showcasing earlier, you saw my UI. That was my local TriCaster. In that case, it was a TriCaster 2 Elite that I have physically in my studio here. But this is a remote TriCaster that's giving me a lot of the same functionalities. I have audio mixing capabilities. I have video playback channels. I have buffer channels for graphics. It really is a slick addition to just say, hey, not every time is the production going to be going perfectly. Sometimes we have to travel with our equipment. With something like TriCaster Now in my back pocket, I'm now always ready to do my production. I'm never stuck because something happened in shipping. This is something I can deploy quickly, and it comes with some production credits. We give you a credit pack if you'd like to, but that capability to say, hey, I always have a full-scale backup that is same kind of source logic I'm working with, same kind of UI and operation I'm working with. And if I have one of the flexes, so if I have the flex control surface, I can actually have my flex control surface control this cloud instance of my TriCaster. It's a really cool pairing to be able to say, actually, you know what? We're going to be okay. We're still being able to do our production. Some of you who are astute are going to ask some questions about input and outputs. And today, I think there are lots of ways to achieve that. But at the end of our session, the last thing I'm going to cover is that final new tool, I think, a new addition to what we're doing in live production. For now, when we're talking about the current instance of our cloud TriCaster Now, we're giving you 8 inputs. We're giving you 4 outputs. And again, these outputs are maneuverable however we like. So I could say, hey, you know what? We're going to do a particular kind of camera feed. Or I can also bring in an SRT feed into my cloud setup. So I can bring NDI feeds, SRT feeds into that. So if I'm working within the streaming protocol, I'm going to bring that into a mix, and then I'm going to stream that separately. Great for disaster recovery. Great for the ability to spin it up, spin it down. Because the only thing I'm kind of losing out on is my total input count. So I went from, in my instance, in my home facility, using a 32-channel TriCaster. Lots of throughput, lots of power. Really works well with that Flex Dual I was showing you earlier. This guy, perfect accompaniment to the Flex, the sort of smaller control surface option we have. Similar process, similar ideas, but the fact that I can pull NDI sources in, get sources back out, is just so slick. We do the hosting for all of this. So if you're afraid of how do I work the cloud, how do I operate the system, when you launch TriCaster Now, we give you all of the services almost as easy as building like a Lego system. So we give you the main production switcher. We give you NDI Bridge, which is that service that allows us to do connectivity between multiple sites. And we're also even giving you the ability to have a live panel, which is an added level of control. So if I wanted to give my TriCaster Now to a novice user, I could give them a simplified control in the UI that they could click through and operate really at a moment's notice. Again, in disaster recovery mode, my controller can actually switch which TriCaster it's controlling. It's one of the cool feature sets that happens on the Flex systems. So I could point the Flex to a TriCaster that is in my facility, like I did here. And then if something were to happen, let's just say the TriCaster, again, most of the time we're doing this traveling, where like my system, something happened, the UPS guy decided to drop it or something like that, absolute emergency. Hey, you know what? My Flex could still connect up to my cloud TriCaster and control it just the same. So different function, different features. And I do think that what we're doing a lot with TriCaster Now is giving productions that want to take that next level step the opportunity to at a very low cost. I work with a lot of organizations that are colleges doing commencements, end of year graduations, big events. You probably have a production facility already built for that. But when the events stack up and are getting really intense, sometimes you don't always have the budget to drop in a brand new system. Something like TriCaster Now offers you a monthly subscription to a full production system that you could spin up in 15 minutes. You already have to have some NDI enablement or SRT. You have to be able to get into the cloud. But with something like NDI Bridge, which the service provides you, that allows you to do your connectivity. And as we saw before, and I'll pull the UI back up, I'm actually bringing that camera from the remote facility. So I'm actually I get access to all these different NDI inputs. I could go in and add a new NDI input in here. Let's see. Let's add the TriCaster's output. So now that the TriCaster I'm using's output. Sorry, we may have had a little echo there. NDI brings audio along with it, so just good to know that, hey, the system's working appropriately. We're actually bringing audio and video together in sync. This, I just pulled my system's UI in. I could pull in, so we had the PTZ in. Let's see. I could bring a remote connection if I had that going on. I'm not going to leverage that right now. But I have all of the different NDI outputs, multi-viewers, mixes, different camera channels. All of that can be brought across into my cloud instance. Now, if I wasn't using a TriCaster to TriCaster workflow, and I had something just like an NDI-enabled device like the PTZ I have here, I also see that in my cloud. So I kind of stepped you through a few pieces here where we went from physical control surface. So we showed that physical control surface, which really gives you unparalleled control over any system. Then we talked a little bit about NDI tools as just something to have in your back pocket. This is that next level of making sure that your live stream is always going on and you're not making a concession because I'm able to do my entire workflow. stream, record, play video back files. It just works the same way a traditional TriCaster does, with the added benefit that one, you don't have to know the cloud. Two, we make a service that allows you to connect sources and run the system. And three, the last piece here, and this is sort of a subtle one, this is running a very powerful KVM tool. It's running nice DZF. That gives me the capability to see what my quality is, what my resolution is pushing out at. In this instance, I have a laptop in my facility. My laptop's actually 1920 by 1200, something I found out about 30 minutes before our show went, and I was like, oh man, look, this laptop isn't a full rectangle. Little things that you learn when you're doing these kinds of setups in production. But I have the ability to go in and actually check the quality of what's going on. This live KVM is giving me full frame rate, full feedback. And so I'm not making a concession to use my cloud. It's just as if I was using it locally on site. As a matter of fact, I don't have the mouse being pushed across my KVM here, so I apologize, but I'm actually able to control the switcher. You know, my latency and feedback is almost non-existent. And again, this is not in my facility. This isn't a computer running in my, another space in New Jersey. This is about, a couple 100 miles away down in the Virginia area, and I'm able to access it as if it was a local computer. And I'm able to control it as if it was any TriCaster. I really like TC Now as a starter. I'd be remiss to say that as Vizrt, we also offer a much larger scale production system called the Vector. It's part of Viz Now. And anybody who wanted to sort of say, well, actually, you know what, I like cloud production, but 8 inputs just isn't enough. We do offer a much more full feature rich TriCaster available for you in the cloud. So we talked about TC Now. I like TC Now, monthly, simple, does all the operation for you. With Vector, we're hosting that on your Amazon account. So for my cloud, people doing live stream production, that would be hosted on your side. And you're going to pick the appropriate cloud destination. If you're on the West Coast, you're going to be operating out of US West because it's with AWS. If you're on the East Coast, you're going to be operating on US East. We give you some ease of use tools so that you're not actually doing anything in the cloud side. You're not setting up your own custom EC3 server. I know we're getting a little bit in the weeds here, but we really make it simple and easy. I'm going to try and actually bounce out of my TriCaster's interface for a second so I can showcase what it looks like when we launch Viz Now. I think I just have to close this. Okay, and now I'm going to actually shoot over to just show. It's really, really straightforward with TriCaster Now. In this instance, this is my TriCaster that's being showcased, and I'll sort of take this off. But all I'm able to do is just open my instance of TriCaster, my instance of Bridge, or my instance of Live Panel. And so this is going to launch a nice DCV client, and then we'll click connect to trust this, and then my network connection here is a little open. But bam, now I'm in a TriCaster pretty quickly, and all I had to do was, log into a terminal. We do have a secure login, so per user, you're able to sort of say, hey, this is the user account, and this is access to the TriCaster they want. When we're working with the sort of bigger brother with Viz Now, we're actually able to license out accounts so that somebody could say, hey, you're just going to be doing production. We just want you to have access to the TriCaster. Versus our engineers, as we were doing earlier in our call, if we need to get into the nitty gritty with engineering, hey, we're going to give access at a different level to maybe configure my bridge server. We're talking about lots of high level stuff, but I want to bring it down to something very simple. I have a full production switcher anywhere I want at any time. I can spin it up, and all of my sources can be made available. I pointed out earlier in our conversation that those of you astute should have a question, which is, what if I don't have all of the production gear that you have, Chris, and I want to start to use something like a cloud instance of TriCaster? Well, I want to end with sort of this product, and we're going to talk a lot about what it means to enable a virtualized production and how that can help really level up your live streaming event. So at Viz, we have been pushing the edges of what it means to be in the cloud. What does that mean for your production? What does that mean for your inputs, your engineering, and how are you able to sort of manage all of this? As part of what NDI has done, we have a lot of cool tools that we can leverage. So something like NDI Bridge, which allows me to connect multiple points. But NDI Bridge today, as most people think of it, I think is for your experts. I myself set up my bridge as part of this call, and I'm able to do these cloud instances and things like that. But let's just say you've never done any of that, and you want to get 4 SDI signals into a TriCaster anywhere. Well, the next product we're going to showcase encapsulates that, and that is the Tetra. So I have a little piece of video content. I'm going to play the little piece of video content for the Tetra, and then we're going to talk about what the Tetra gives you guys, and I think you're going to be really surprised. All right, so the Viz Connect Tetra is the final piece that we're going to discuss for your live streaming needs. We talked about control, having a control surface like the Flex Dual. We talked about tools that you can enable, things like NDI for free. We talked about disaster recovery with something like the TriCaster Now and Vector Now. What I think about the last sort of piece of the puzzle is how do I continue to set up these connections and not necessarily have to get a full TriCaster 2 Elite at every site. And with that, I think about what we have with the Tetra. Tetra is a single device that comes with bridge, comes with 4 connections, so we can get 4K 60 into your workflow. And those are bi-directional, so they can be configured as inputs and outputs, as well as being bi-directional in NDI. So I could do 3 inputs in, 1 input out. And now I enable my cloud workflows. I have some content I want to showcase. So we'll pop over to what the Tetra looks like. So our Tetra is a pretty slick device. It's small form factor. I have it here compared to some of the old TriCaster Minis, so you can see in comparison what it's eaten up in sort of the rack space. This is Tetra at a glance. And it's the ability to interact and interoperate between your SDI and NDI ecosystem. So I have 4 connections that can be made either as inputs or outputs. And now I start to change the way I think about my production environment. So my production environment can be very traditional. I have a Tetra in my facility. I connect 4 4G cameras into it. And now my TriCaster can work with those 4G cameras. Beautiful. And I think I have this auto running, unfortunately. But beyond that, I can also work with instances of remote TriCasters. So I could have a facility in New York City, in Manhattan. Maybe if I wanted to have a Tetra in the studio at B&H, I could have a Tetra there connecting 4 cameras into it. Or taking 3 cameras into it from your local on-site and then giving a camera back, a return back, or just a program feedback. And because it has bridge, I could be using those sources here in my facility in New Jersey, or in Florida, or in Chicago, or in California, or technically anywhere I can push the network connection. So I could have remote contribution with a device that is configurable, with a device that delivers high quality video and audio, with a device that I can manage separately from my production, and I don't have to worry about how I assembled it or what cards I put into it or what was my process and build. Was I limited by budget? Was I limited by availability? The Tetra is that really slick all in one box. So now I take that same logic from connected remote locations and I say, hey, I can actually send a signal to the cloud. So with my TriCaster now, we showcased that earlier, I could take 4 signals anywhere in the country and bridge them up to my cloud TriCaster. Beautiful. If I'm doing a high-level sports workflow and I really care about that 4K 60 quality, I could actually put multiple Tetras in a stadium, connect those cameras, and be able to do a full virtualized production, sports-based, with Viz now. And actually, we showcased some of this earlier this year in 2024. We actually did a full cloud production leveraging the Vector with the NHL. So if you're wondering, hey, is this stuff show ready? Yeah, you guys have access to a full-scale production solution that has ultra-low latency and is really production-rich with what we're doing in Viz now as well as TriCaster now. Tetra is your enablement for that. We also have a really cool graphics platform called Flowix. Flowix typically works in an HTML5 based environment. So on my TriCaster here, it's very easy to incorporate Flowix, including my virtualized TriCaster. But if you are not working with an HTML5 centric or software centric switcher, we can actually take Flowix down and turn it into key and fill so that you can power a traditional old school switcher. So those are some of the cool things that the Tetra provides. As a really slick, simple UI that allows you to individually operate the various inputs it's got or outputs it's got going on. You have the ability to also pair this with audio, so you can use a USB enabled audio device and actually pair that in the production workflow. So I think in the previous slide we sort of showcased that it's got an I/O card and the ability to take some inputs into it. But if I add USB connectivity, I can do some slick things with what we enable in Windows. And so now I can expand my audio and encapsulate my audio, bring it up to the cloud, bring it down from the cloud, and have everything in sync. So the Tetra really is that last piece of the puzzle that I think changes the way we think about traditional productions. It is a simple device. It's very straightforward. Hey, here are 4 12G channels of SDI into NDI. I think that's simple for people to understand. People probably have some amount of NDI conversion in their production today, whether it be application-based, a piece of hardware. The Tetra sort of fits into that really nicely. But what it's enabling and why I really like to talk about it, and it's brand new, is that Tetra really puts you in a position to really work anywhere. If I wanted to control my TriCaster from my apartment, I could open up my laptop, use Bridge, connect to a TriCaster, for instance, the one that's behind me, and actually have my control surface, either the Flex Dual that we showed earlier or the smaller Flex that could go and connect to that TriCaster. And then with the laptop, I could operate my full system. That same concept, I could be in studio with all my devices, but also have a TriCaster running in the cloud. Tetra now enables that. And then lastly, when we think about our corporate environments, our live streams that we have to do for in-house, we think about our churches where we're interconnected, or even our school systems where we're sort of spanning the entire state. Today, I think remote contribution is typically done through something like Teams or Zoom, and those tools work great. Those are services that are a new language that people have adopted. If I really wanted to kick my production, my live production that's got multiple sites to a different level, the Tetra now enables me to send a box, that box arrives, connect the cameras into it, connect one feed out of it, and now I could do really slick remote contribution as well as feeding an output back. I could feed that output back to the cameras. I could feed that output to a projector. I really sort of changed the dynamics I'm doing for my multi-site productions. And I think there's so many instances where today we have to use some free tool or some a software tool that is sort of designed for a team meeting, but not necessarily designed for the high levels of video, audio, color correction incorporation into the ability to like change how much bandwidth the feeds are doing. That is where the Tetra sort of takes everything to the next level. If you're in a sports production facility, you can enable Tetras so that, hey, I can get my 12G feeds coming to my switcher. And then the next iteration of your switcher no longer has to physically be present on the facility. If I'm in an esports production, something that I know a lot about for my background, and I want to connect multiple computers around the country or multiple computer setups, I can throw a Tetra down at that site. It's going to grab all the NDI feeds and now produce them as a bridge signal that I can incorporate into my master controller. So I can have one on the West Coast, one in LA, one in Las Vegas, one in Boston, and one in Miami, and have these sort of different groups of feeds going into some master control setup, whether that be in the cloud or in my own home facility. Again, I think about a lot when we're talking about our houses of worship. We want to connect different systems. The fact that the Tetra is using the wide available public internet, it doesn't have a monthly cost associated with it beyond whatever your network connection is. It is a thing that you can purchase, put in your facility. As long as you have a support contract on, that would be the only other thing you might need. And that's the final beauty of all this. Because it isn't DIY, because it isn't a card-based system that what could I purchase when I could purchase it, right? Did I have to cut back a little bit on the IO card? Was there no cards available, so I just had to buy whatever I could? The Tetra solves a lot of those different setups in one nice and neat box. So from my perspective, I really like the suite of enablement from control to IP enablement, cloud-based workflows, and then the Tetra really sort of puts a nice cap on that to say, hey, I can do a little bit of everything. And now I'm not really limited by where I am or what I need to do. Like, I don't have to make a concession for either scenario. I'm still able to do my full production drop of the hat. We pushed a little quick through everything. And the only thing I think I could showcase to sort of wrap everything up might be, I talked a little bit about Vector and TriCaster Now, and I do have a slide that I could highlight that we could just showcase the difference between the two. So I'm going to push that slide up, and then we'll sort of take us to the end of the show here. One moment as I get everything set up. And we'll show... And we talked a little bit about TriCaster Now, what's able to happen, and Vizrt as an organization, we are doing the hosting for you in TriCaster Now, so that's really cool, and we get all the adaptability, reliability, scalability out of it. And there's different kinds of scenarios where you might be doing a distributed model where you have multiple team members or you have a live event. I really like TriCaster Now in corporate communications, but I just wanted to highlight that we do have the ultra powerful Vector. If you are in that environment where you really, really, really need to do everything and more, the Vector enables the ability to incorporate automation, live real-time graphics, replay. It is that next level for virtualized production. Oh, a lot of knowledge condensed in a very small amount of time. I'm sure there's probably some Q&A that's going to happen, but I've yapped for almost 45 minutes, and I figured now's a good time to re-engage with anybody on the Zoom call.
That was awesome, Chris. The first thing that comes to mind for me is what's the starting point to get into something like the smaller end of that system? What's the target audience? Whenever I hear like SDI, I automatically think, I'm like, all right, SDI, we're talking about people who are moving, more of a professional production environment. They're moving more signal across. They're doing something on a higher level. What's the starting point? Like, at what point can you enter and be like, all right, this system's not completely overkill for what I'm doing?
A TC Now or a Mini Go are your two entry points into what we consider the bare minimum for production. I think our bare minimum starts pretty high. It's not on the very floor. It's multiple cameras, it's recording, it's graphics, it's video playback, and some of the switching capabilities that we show. So TriCaster Now is available for $125 a month. We also offer a discovery pass that allows you for a month for a less expensive. I don't know the number off the top of my head. I apologize, but just to like test it out and sort of say, hey, what does this look like for my environment? For those people who are out in my friends like in the middle of like Manitoba Cabinet in the woods where they don't even have internet, they might look like something like the Mini Go, which is USB enabled for things like webcams and local sources. USB microphone, USB camera, that approach. So those are the two systems I think that are like the entry points. And the beauty of it is that both are NDI and both are the same software base. So if you're using one or the other, you're developing the same skill set, and that scales all the way towards our higher level systems.
Okay, and I know you're wearing all hats over there. It's like I was getting tired just watching you. I'm like, man, I would have screwed something up along the way. What is a normal for like? I'm just curious, like for what you were doing. How many people normally? What's a normal production team for? A production that you would be doing. If I said, Chris, you could have whatever amount of people you need to do, so you just sit here on camera and focus. How many production people would you need behind?
So you probably, I would say you're probably going to have your TD and your director, and then someone managing audio. So that those three people are going to be essential. Today's normal gets interesting. I think we do a lot of things with Teams and Zoom. And so you typically have somebody wrangling that as well. And then if you're really doing your best effort forward, you probably have two people with a backup entry into those pathways, just in case something happens with your network environment. And I think a lot of productions today are operating in that space. But I've done low level productions where I'm using a touch device. I'm on camera and I'm just using my touch screen to sort of drive things. But I think like a lot of today's live streaming productions, you're at least looking at two or three people, somebody who's, technical directing the show. I did a little bit of that today. Someone who's running audio for, and audio can be run in a variety of ways today. I think with IP audio getting ever more expansive, whether that's a Dante operator or in the very near future, an NDI audio operator with the new controls wars that are happening in that space. Somebody who's just helping guide that, making the operators a little easier. And then like the last position I think that's grown recently is somebody who's wrangling the chat app. And that person is often, I think, so important because sometimes it's control of what's happening, and sometimes it's just like the 5 minutes before, while everyone else is focused on the production, they just talk to everybody and say, hey, look here on your camera, and please, don't have anyone in the background, or don't mute and kill your video. I'm sure you deal with this all the time, Derek, where like someone's in their home studio and then 2 minutes before the show goes, they go dark, and you will have the panic moment of is that happening because you did it, and even though I told you not to do it, like, is that you doing that, or is this now the application that has sort of done this to me, and now we're all sweating, and then they pop back on 5 seconds before the video starts, and we're all
Have you been
I'm sure
watching us daily? Are you?
you do enough of these, and you live through all of it, and I think that's the beauty of like why you want to have the pro tools like behind the scenes. The professional tools allow you to get out of the jam. They allow you to, someone's video isn't showing up. I loaded their video, their face. I took a picture off of LinkedIn, and if I have to, I'll throw their picture up. I grabbed a picture of them off of Facebook or something. Like, we just got something to produce it so that when the talent is whoever, a football coach, a youth pastor, a diplomat from another country, we're not necessarily relying on them to be the video professionals. Let us do the heavy lifting because we'll make it happen.
Definitely. A question in from YouTube, and I figured this would be a popular group of people, the Twitch streamers. Because one thing, it's like, of course, a lot of what you're talking about is higher production, right? There's a more complex, involved productions, but I feel like now people people are getting into this, and it's interesting. And the fact that like you can sit in your living room and have a high quality production, and you don't have you have a segment of the industry that's like, okay, I don't want to just go bare bones. I want to actually build a cool setup. It's fun. It's a project. Especially like people are sitting home and it's like, I'm bored. I want something to do. I want something to really take hold of. So this question of Visual Modulation's asking, I think I have a basic grasp of streaming. This seems to get much deeper. For an amateur Twitch stream type of person, what's the learning curve for
Sure.
getting into this?
Yeah, I think when we look at some of the free tools that are available, there's some inspiration from the way production switchers work. There's like scene-based workflows and things like that. So some of what I was doing behind the scenes when I was sort of moving my boxes and growing my shrinking is a similar idea. I think in those environments, the cool parts are the ability to grab my sources really easily, right? I got my gameplay source, and maybe I have like a Discord or a chat app running in the background, and I can run these little modules individually. When we sort of jump up into the professional realm, all of those features are there. We have a really robust library on YouTube where one of my good friends in the organization, Richard Evans, has gone through and does these little tutorials of just little chunks of the system. But those, starting with something that's entirely free, is a slick way to sort of level up. And then what you would gain from that little investment on something like a TC Now and invest sort of setup is the ability to incorporate a lot of different levels of source count. Traditionally, we're just thinking about our computer, but a lot of gamers I know also have like a PlayStation or a Switch or something else in their facility. And today you probably go through like capture cards and like to get that stream to the next level. There's a lot of like in-betweens and a lot of heavy lifting that like you're on a forum and on a YouTube video. And wait, that YouTube video is a year ago. So what has changed since then? When we level up to some of the professional level tools, I showcased that NDI webpage. I think that's so much power for free. That's so much power for ease of connectivity. I mean, everything we're doing in this is going through NDI, which is taking my headset, my audio, and my webcam video and presenting that to the switcher, and then I'm able to do all the gyrations I was able to do. But free Tuesday tutorials, a great leg up, and can get you in depth and involved. And I actually, as an aside, I work with a local esports group in New York City. I'm very frequent on their Discord, and I'm constantly interacting with the complexities because it starts with something as simple as I want to stream my game, but in the world of video games, your video resolutions and your frame rates far exceed what we're doing in the broadcast world. You know, they want 120 hertz, they want 4K, like everything is so much higher. So yeah, it's possible to get access to and grow those skills. You know, grow the skills from a free software app to something like a TriCaster Now. And then I think if I'm in that position, it's more the business approach, which is I now have a professional tool, which I can get support and service on if I need to. There's an entire library of what this tool enables. What do I do to make, you know, how do I now make my stream do more? Some of the high level streamers are pulling in quite a lot bit more than $125, and the fact that that's all virtualized, and you don't have to be a cloud guru. You could still be your traditional gamer, having your Twitch chat incorporated with something like an HTML5 graphic, having your boxes, branding your segments. That's all very possible in what we have with the TriCaster Now.
Yeah, so if I understand this correctly, it's all video and audio. Everything is just being patched into one. Because that's one of the things that, you know, coming from me, where it's like my setup, my video and my audio are completely separate. So it's like there are times when I'm just like, it'd be so much easier if I just had like one interface, if I had software, you know, like software and hardware working together in harmony to pull both sides of it all into one thing, where I just had one place where I'm going.
Let's talk nitty gritty. Delay. Let's just
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
talk about the monster in the room, right? Sometimes I got to work through the software and the cards, but even then, everything's working, and I just can't get the lip sync. Like I can't. I have this audio pathway and this video pathway. Maybe they're both IP, and there's a slight timing difference. Maybe my SDI workflow, because of my router, it's crisp, but my audio delay, because I don't have a clock, it's all over the place. When I push this all into the NDI ecosystem, just being able to marry that and push it along is so important. And I spent a couple of minutes before, really yesterday and the day before, about like, how am I going to do this presentation, right? We're using a traditional call-in app that's just used to computer screen, webcam, and headset. So I sort of said, hold on, let's use the tools. Everything NDI into the one system and everything out of that system back out. so that my video and audio have the same latency. Whatever the milliseconds difference is happening locally in here. But, if I actually had this microphone going straight to the call, you would probably be able to notice. I mean, we would, because we do a video all the time.
Mhm. That's such a great point too, and I love that you bring up like the very fact of what we're streaming through right now. We're going through Zoom, which is choking out a lot of the capabilities that, for lack of a better term, it's like you're working around roadblocks and jumping over fallen trees and crawling through puddles just to get everything up and then to get everything, working the audio and the video playing well together. It's not very easy. And the fact that look, you're here and it's like your audio is synced and everything's in line. I'm like, that's a win right there. People don't even know. It looks like, oh, it just logged on to Zoom.
Do we want to pull the curtain back? Because we did have a moment earlier
Yeah.
where, I played a piece of video content. And my system has the ability to, so when I cut to the video, it just plays the video. And I knew there was audio on it, but it was a marketing clip. I didn't create that video. And I wanted you guys in the studio to listen to make sure it wasn't overblown. Like, how does this actually sound when you listen to it? I want to make sure it sounds good through the Zoom call because there's audio compression that's happening and who knows. And for 5 minutes, we went through settings of checking to make sure that the audio crispness was there. I know in my system, because it's designed for live broadcast, it's doing the audio fine, but there's that added level of testing. And when we got there, it's almost like I wish I could have like, I joked with you guys, we should have been recording that. And then that's the 5-minute seminar. Here's how you do a live stream like a pro. Because sometimes it's just a couple of guys sharing ideas of going, oh, actually, you know what? We got to go into this setting on this app. I think when you get into some of the higher level tools, you start to gain a respect for like the way things are designed and the way things are laid out. And the fact that like a lot of the free tools you can pop up and push into any, I'm going to put this module here and I'm going to drop the audio mixer here because I like that. But then sometimes when you get in the heat of battle, you get a little frazzled, and to have everything in a nice UI goes a long way. I think we have I see my Q&A popping up.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get back to there was another question from Visual Modulations asking about automations, which I think is a huge part. It's like people want to be able to do presets, if you will, or things that are going to make everything easier. Can you talk about? I know you were jumping all around. You had a lot going on. Can you talk about the automation aspect to make live production easier?
Automation with TriCasters in the backbone is really slick. We have 2 different flavors of macros we can build, but I want to focus on one, which is the contextual macro. In short, I can build one set of automation tools that just care about what's on program or what am I actually sending out live. And if I copy all of those macros and just change a variable to be preview, now I have all of my show capabilities for pulling up a lower third or creating the boxes like I was doing, or maybe something as easy as, am I streaming? Am I recording? Like make a silly button that just says, when I push this, it's going to start streaming and recording, because it happens all the time. You talk about wearing a lot of hats. You have everything set up. You forgot to hit the record button. I mean, just being able to have that automation. So you can design those and build those. The other thing we have is some cool context-based ones. I can set by audio or video. So when a clip plays or when an audio level engages, I can have that happen. Really cool in this sort of gamer world where the game sometimes doesn't run audio when you're not focused on it. So if I'm a streamer, I could have a little macro that says, when the game audio is live, cut to the video feed that has the gameplay. Something as simple as that. Or if I'm a church and I have a choir, sometimes the choir's singing, but maybe I'm focused on who's speaking on the podium. If they're getting into it, if they hit a certain dB level and they're really singing that day, just cut to them. Or maybe it makes a picture-in-picture box. So we can drive the automation ourselves with that in the control surface. I had those direct buttons I could bind, or you could have the automation just sort of take over the system. And last, if you really want to get into the high levels of what's capable, you can actually load a script into your TriCaster via Microsoft Word. I know that really complicated program that everyone doesn't know how to use. And you could actually type in the comment section to add context to your script. So you could be talking about the products and it could be controlling the TriCaster. I didn't want to get too deep into that because I feel like that's really for the all-in-one operator where I really just want to be able to speak. but that is another feature set. So lots of levels of automation, and then control could be visual in the UI. It could be with its own web GUI. We work with things like Stream Deck, so you could work with something that is home used, or our control systems are designed to sort of give you that capability.
Wow, awesome. We'll wrap it up with a little two-part question here, Chris. How would you integrate social media comments as graphic elements into the production? And then the best way to bring in remote guests.
Okay, quick. Well, two different tools, different ideas. Today, FlowX is a graphic software that we have that would work for all kinds of streaming needs. Social media integration, the Twitch streamers of the world, you want to put your Twitch chat in. FlowX is HTML5. It's got a gigantic video library out there. It uses modules that you can click and drag into the graphic. Really, really simple, and a lot of data connectors. So I could pull in content from social media, but add moderation. Today, social media is sort of the Wild West, and maybe my stream is sponsored in such a way, or my brand is tailored in such a way that I don't want just anything being pushed out there. Lots of levels of automation. So that's FlowX. We didn't really dive deep into it, but it comes with new system purchases on TriCaster, so get a couple months of it for free, and there's different tiers of it. I really like that. Remote contribution, I think we sort of opened the floodgates on what remote contribution can be. Remote contribution can be something like the Zoom call or a Teams call. Today, we can run those on some TriCasters and join them from the device and extract the callers with their audio mix minus. So that's like for your corporate setups or your pharmaceutical productions, things that are paying the bills. If you're doing live streaming, like those guys have events every day of the week, and you could do something easy like that. There are some other sophisticated tools. There's some NDI tools that allow for remote contribution. And just in the world that is out there, there are a lot of new devices emerging. Live Call Connect is ours. That's that software that allows you to work with different kinds of applications, WhatsApp, Zoom, Slack, etc. But I think it really is the oyster of software. And then if you really want to dial that in, that new Tetra. If you're a corporate company, if you're streaming for corporate, to be able to say, we're going to do it big. We're going to use all our traditional production tools. And rather than hitting a service and then coming back down and losing video compression, losing audio compression, I want full video, full audio as fast as we can get the network connection to us. I've seen some really wicked productions internal for some of these very high level companies that it's amazing. And now that we have this tool in place, you no longer have to go and build all the pieces. You go to B&H, open the web page, and say, I want the Tetra. I know it's going to do what I need.
I love technology. Makes everything so much easier, Chris. It's always great having you on, man. But this is like near and dear to the event space. It's hard because we, doing the whole virtual production thing, and I think even us as a team, it's like we're piecing it together. We're learning as we go. You're learning what you need. You're learning how you want to grow and what kind of grows with you and what do you outgrow and grow into. So it's always good to put the feelers out for us and see what's out there in the production world and to get all your knowledge and expertise behind it, man. So huge thank you to you, the entire Vizrt team. I hope my production team behind the scenes is paying attention to this one as well. Let's give them a shout out because I just get to sit here on camera. It's like when you were talking about all this stuff and it's like, yeah, handling the social media and handling all the other feeds and all the stuff that's going on. Those are the true MVPs, the people behind.
Yeah. And I think in today's world, to your point, home studios, I got my operators are anywhere. And so almost everything we talked about is cloud accessible. It's virtualized. It's in an IP state. So that my graphics operator could be anywhere in the country. My engineering charge doesn't actually have to be the guy who's there. And I think thinking about the days of yore, to think that like my streaming engineer, like you think about like 15 years ago, we were doing things with like all the like custom streaming services. I'm trying to think of the names of them. It's like Brightcove and like, you had to log into this old website and you could barely stream 720 and somebody had to be there to make sure everything was like perfect. And then today it's like that, my engineer is somebody who can open a laptop up and open a screen. Like run this app really quickly. You're on NDI. Does this look right to you? Cool. I'm hitting the button.
Right. Beautiful place to be, and it's a wonderful time to be alive. Huge thank you again to Chris Burgos and Vizrt for putting on this wonderful presentation. To all of our viewers out there, step up your streaming game, dive into it. It's fun to learn this stuff and to really see where you can push the boundaries on technology, streaming, all that stuff. Fun, exciting. Education is what we do here best on the event space, but that is all we have for you for right now. Another edition of the B&H Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.